I picked up this book in a bookshop recently and I was grabbed straight away by the image on the cover. And it's a book called The North American Indian, showing the work of Edward S. Curtis. And I'm ashamed to say I'd never heard of him before. But as I started to flick through the pages, I realized that he had done some incredible work and really exhaustive work photographing the Native American tribes in the late 1800s, where they were, their faces, how they lived their lives, what their dress was, what their teepees looked like, what they ate. And it was really, really fascinating work to look through, really evocative stuff. I've flicked through this book many times now, and apart from the fact that it's undeniably beautiful work, it feels like really important work. It feels like work that portrait photographers should take on, documenting people. I mean, I'm sitting with this book in my hand, these images, over 100 years after they were taken, looking at a people who have by and large lost a lot of their culture now, and that's a tragedy, but it has been documented. It's been rescued in some form for us to see and to appreciate nowadays. Now, I'm a portrait photographer and a street photographer, but I've kind of separated the two, and there's a real tragedy in that. I ask people to come to my studio who want portraits, and I shoot their portraits. Then I go out in the street and I just shoot street photography in a more candid fashion, but I don't engage with people on the street. And I'm trying to find a way to bring those two things together, to be able to go out onto the street and ask people I don't know, strangers, for portraits. And I know it's only my fear of doing that that's holding me back. So I wanted to make this video as much for me as for you, and I wanted advice on how do I go out and photograph strangers? What should my approach be? How do I talk to people? And it's really lucky that I have a friend, Gabrielle, who is an absolute ninja at this sort of stuff. Her job is to travel around and to take portraits of people wherever she goes. So I did this interview with her to pick her brain about what her story is with photography, how she got into shooting strangers, and what her approach is. Now, we didn't get to a lot of the interesting things that Gabrielle's done in this interview because I wanted her to focus on how she approaches strangers and what it's like doing the kind of work that she does. But just to give you some headlines, she took a few years to go up to Iceland and she took photographs there. She ended up writing a book with a bunch of her images in it called An Equal Difference. She's done some amazing work at the Extinction Rebellion protests in London recently. And she took a trip on a motorbike from Stonehenge in London all the way up through Europe and Scandinavia, ending up at Arctic Henge in Iceland and taking photographs along the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave links to her work down below so you can go and check that out in your own time. But for this video, I took a drive up to Edinburgh where I caught up with Gabrielle on her 2-month trip around the Hebrides and Scotland, where at the moment she's doing what she always does, shooting portraits of strangers and talking to them about their experience of daily life wherever they happen to be. So I'm going to shut up now and let Gabrielle Motola tell you about her process for taking portraits with strangers.
I mean, I guess for me, photography started when I was about 18 or 19, 18. When I was a sophomore at college, I enrolled in a stills course. And I spent the summer in France with my girlfriend at the time, and we did a week in Paris and then 3 weeks in the south of France. And I took pictures in Paris. It's the first time I'd really been outside of the United States, aside from when I lived in Canada. I was blown away by Europe, by the feeling of how old it was and historical, and obviously all the shapes and the buildings look completely different. So I was photographing buildings, and I was photographing my girlfriend, and I was photographing the surfing and the waves, and I shot probably 20, 25 rolls of film that summer. I remember pulling the negative out of the tin developing tank, and I could see these like negative images of my summer and hanging them in the cabinet. It was already exciting, but then the next day when I went to print them, like seeing those memories come up, that experience of reliving a moment in time, and just the process of like watching the image come up in the dark room and the redness of the light and it was that was it. I was like, well, I don't need a whole crew to go out and do this. I can just do this on my own. It's really personal. It's really intimate. I'm hooked. I decided from there that I wanted to do this. So I thought, well, okay, the people's work I loved at the time, I think really was Annie Leibovitz's early work, like all of her documentary stuff, like all of her, like the stuff that she did that summer in Israel where she was reading Rolling Stone cover to cover, and the kibbutz and her parents, and the stuff that she showed the Rolling Stone editor when she went to go work for them. Like, even that stuff, I was just enchanted with it. It was spring break and I found her address. It was a Van Dam Street studio on the internet and the phone number. So when I got to New York, I just called. So that was like the beginning of my experience in the commercial industry of photography. I was coming up to Annie Leibovitz's studio for 3 months to intern. I mean, when I was interning for them, I didn't have an income. Like, I'd saved money from running and stuff at school, and I was on my own. I wasn't asking for support from my family. I was photographing my friends and music really early on too, because I've played music since I was a little kid. It's just always been in my house. So I was photographing people performing stages, stuff like that, like musicians. And I really liked some of the images I was getting. It was always people. Like, if it wasn't me, it was other people, but it was people I knew, because it was really tough for me to photograph people I didn't know. I think photographing people that I don't know really for me began in Broadway Market. The people there just fascinated me, their faces. So I would challenge myself to photograph people I didn't know. There was this one guy, Tex, who used to come down, always dressed to the nines, from Jamaica, and just lovely and so kind. And I would take pictures of him. I started photographing people on the street in Broadway Market on Saturdays outside my friend's father's gallery. And I set up on the corner, and anyone who was coming by, I was asking, can I take their picture? And they would stand and I'd take their picture. And I was trying to get the changing face of the community, because people, it was gentrifying and new people were moving in, new builds were completing, so new faces were coming and old faces were like still there but also leaving. I think the first step for me was to get my intention really clear as to why I wanted to photograph this person. And for me, it's all an act of honoring, paying attention to people. When I see someone that interests me, I might not be able to verbalize in that moment why, but it's more of an instinct. And I've just worked on getting out of my own way. So not having all the secondary thoughts of like, will they hate me? Will they hit me? Will they say no? Will they be mean? Will they be angry? Will I be angry? Am I nervous? I'm nervous. You know, I don't feel comfortable. Like, trying to just move, that all happens. I still feel those feelings and think those thoughts, but I just let them like fly through. I don't stick with them. And in that process, I'm walking up to the person while that's all going on. If it's an approach picture where I want the person's full attention and I'm not observing them, I'm walking up to them and I'm saying, can I make a portrait of you? Or can I take your picture? Can I make your picture? Can I take any of your pictures? Yeah, certainly.
What's it for?
I don't know. I just like taking pictures of people. I don't have like a plan for it, but it might show up on my Instagram feed. It might be in a gallery one day or a book, but I have no idea. Maybe it won't do anything.
That's fine, no problem.
Maybe it'll just sit on a hard drive. Maybe can I have, maybe just here? I need to get you out of the sun a little bit.
We live in Edinburgh and we come here for the day because it's my son's birthday.
It's your birthday. Happy birthday.
That's my sister's wedding anniversary as well.
Oh, well, happy wedding anniversary and happy birthday. And I am, I'm up here from London. Do you keep a knife in there?
No.
Okay, my dad told me this.
You can.
That's called a karpan.
Karpan.
That's for like a baptised Sikh.
Oh,
So you're not baptised Sikhs.
You're not baptized Sikhs.
Scottish Sikhs.
What's the difference?
That's more devout.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like Orthodox and,
Yeah.
okay, like versus,
Yeah.
I gotcha.
What's your Instagram?
It's GMOTOPHOTOS, Gmoto Photos. Nice. I like your bandana. Do you like mine?
Yeah.
Gmoto Photos. Did you find me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you might find it there, but you can send me a message or you can email me. And if you email me and remind me, I'll send you the group shot.
Oh, Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome. You're very welcome. Right.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye. It's gotten really succinct and short. I used to do the spiel of like, I'm trying to get over my fear of photographing people and it's just, people would be like, freeze up and be like, you could just see them like, no. Some people say why. Now, 9 times out of 10, if someone says why, you're not getting your picture. And if they say yes, then great, now I have permission. And again, I don't let myself indulge in all of those negative feelings of like, oh, I'm taking up too much of their time, or I shouldn't really, oh, this is really bad, I shouldn't really be doing this, or oh my God, I'm really nervous. I photograph them and I talk to them. I'm curious, genuinely, so I indulge my curiosity and I might ask them a question that comes up, or I might make a remark about what they're wearing if I like it. I took the tour up to the Bass Rock. It was amazing. You used to work out there?
Yeah.
What were you doing out there? If you don't mind me asking.
Fishery protection, fishery police.
I was with a boat in Barra that was headed out there just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Are you still fishing?
No, grumpy.
Grumpy. But can't all fishermen be grumpy too? Like, and they can fish and be grumpy professionally?
Yeah.
And he was telling me that he warned a guy about his food, like that a seagull would just come and take it, and the guy looked at him like he was a clown and walked off, and no sooner had he walked off that a seagull swooped in and just grabbed everything and just took off, and everyone laughed. And he said he saw once a guy he was holding his phone out like this, talking on video or whatever, and a seagull came and snatched his mobile phone up and then dropped it in the water just off the shore. Like,
that would be a good insurance claim, eh?
They'll ask me where I'm from, usually with my accent. I mean, what accent really, right? But and we'll get into a conversation. And what I've been doing lately is I've been putting the camera down more and not photographing the whole time, because I could photograph the whole time, let's face it. But I just talking to them and then being really quick with putting the camera back up and taking a picture when I feel something rather than when I see something or think something. So just getting much more into the feeling of what's going on rather than going, oh, they look cool there, like can I get them back to that pose? I don't really do that with my street pictures the way that I would do that with a model or with a portrait of somebody that I'm trying to communicate a mood to or something. It's more just allowing them to be themselves. I suppose I would say I'm drawn to open faces, like open people first, but then if I see somebody in a real grump, I might be drawn to that too. I guess it's like I'm drawn to people that are focused in some way, either in what they're doing or in a thought, or they're expressing some kind of an emotion, or yeah, they just have a story on their face.
Reggie's been here since 1898.
Oh, since Noah fell out his ark, go and say it.
Where are you born?
Where was I born?
Yeah.
About 2 feet up the road.
North Berwick, that's where I was born.
So isn't there, I heard there's something to do with witches around here. There was a history of
The
witches.
North Berwick witches, yeah.
Yeah?
And the Anchor's Green just up the road there.
What happened? Like they burnt some,
Oh,
or?
they burnt them, aye.
It was King James the 46, James King VI. His
Poor Bella Beach.
his wife was coming. His wife was he was married the Maid of Denmark, and she was coming across from Denmark.
Thing made up a storm and sunk the ship.
The weather was bad, so he blamed the witches and burnt them.
Makes sense.
He said there's still witches about North Berwick.
Do you know any?
Yeah.
Really?
I've not seen any names.
No, you don't have to. They might not appreciate
If you
that.
see them with broomsticks and black cats, you ken they're a witch.
I had a boyfriend in high school, and his dad was a Harley rider, and so was he. And his dad gave me a ride on his Harley. I think it was like a Springer Softail or something like that. And I remember he drove me around the block on it, and it was the most thrilling thing I think I'd ever experienced. I just remember getting off that bike and thinking, wow, that's the last time I sit on the back. Like, not as in I didn't enjoy the back, but as in I want to be on the front. And when I moved to New York, about a year into living there, when I finally got like a steady apartment and I wasn't hopping from sofa to floor, I decided I was buying a motorcycle. So I got on eBay and I found a 1987 Honda Rebel 250. Suddenly I was in New York, and I went from having to depend upon the subway and, I couldn't really afford taxis, to being able to be anywhere I wanted to be in 20 minutes. And the feeling of driving over the Williamsburg Bridge on a motorcycle is just exhilarating. Anytime I visited a city, I rented a motorcycle. If I was in Rome, I rented a motorcycle. And it's crazy driving in Rome. If I was in Paris, I rented a motorcycle or a scooter or something with wheels. So bikes just became part of like me exploring and being in a city, having, independence, having agency, being able to control like where I was, when I was, get there, not having to sit in traffic. And just the feeling of being on a bike, like when you're on a bike, you're not cut off from the environment, you're in the environment. And you experience things viscerally, and you're not in the bubble of the car with the windshield and all the metal all around you. You're human, you're an animal, you've got sensors all over you. And so, being on a bike is like being in a place, moving through it, but being in it. And the other thing it does really well for me is it calms my mind down. So like I mentioned, I have social anxiety. It's like people wouldn't think that from what I do, but I do, and I still have to work on it. And so when you get on a motorcycle, that part of your brain that's like fight or flight, the amygdala, like that's generating the anxiety in your daily life, that chatter, you get on a bike and it's like, oh, I have a job. I will keep you alive. And it shuts up, and it's like, what's that guy doing? Is that guy gonna pull out in front? Is that a puddle? Is that like, is that gravel? Like, oh my God, you're going too fast, downshift. It's just constantly keeping you busy in a good way. And then like your higher consciousness just flies like a kite above you. It's the best. I was intrigued with Scotland and its relationship, to Iceland, and also its political relationship to the United Kingdom at the moment. And I wanted to explore it on a motorcycle. It is an extraordinary, way underrated country. And so I decided I was going to take 4 or 5 weeks and I was going to explore all of it, well, as much as I could, and photograph the people in between. And I did the inner, the outer Hebrides. I did Just. I connected with a painter there that I had met on Instagram, like through Instagram. I photographed her in her studio painting. I had these realizations, like I realized when I was photographing her painting that my photographs, we think of photographs as complete entities unto themselves because it's each frame, but really I feel like when I'm shooting it's like a brushstroke. Each frame is a brushstroke bringing me closer to the final picture. And then I went to Barra. The island of Barra is incredible. And I learned about, the history of Gaelic, the history of the Scottish people. I have a very different view of Westminster than I used to. I have a very different view of the United Kingdom. I have a very different view of Gaelic, of the history of the language. Talking to the local people about tourism, really connecting to people locally. When I travel, it's people. I mean, it's places, but it's really people that I connect to. My choice of cameras has kind of come about through my need to feel comfortable with people, and I don't want a lot of gear between me and them. I started looking for small cameras early on, smaller cameras, so I got like the Voigtlander Bessa T when I was shooting film, and then when I could afford it, I got a Leica M6. That was when I was a real photographer. I decided I deserved a Leica. And then when digital came out, Olympus were making these really small, lightweight cameras that were less expensive, less glass, and they just happened to be really fast, great images. So I got turned on to them really early on because when the OM-DM5 I think came out, I bought one, and it was like, it was not in my way. So it helped me to get closer to people because it was so small. It just fit me. I think it's important that the camera fits you. So there's not really like the best camera. It's just what fits you. And I started on a 35mm, which is a 17 in micro four thirds, so it's like 34mm. And eventually I wanted a bit more compression, so I moved, and less distortion, so I moved to the 50 or the 25mm because I get close to people, so I need a shorter length. I moved around a lot as a kid. From the age of 6, it was almost every 2 years until I was about 13. And then it was a lot after that too. And as an adult, I've moved around. So I'm used to adapting. And one of the things about adapting is you need to read people, you need to read the room, you need to read the situation. When I walk up to somebody, I'm looking to fall into them in a way and see what they're like how they react to me. And I'm coming to them with all of that experience, all of that, which is all of that has helped shape my intuition. I never know where it's going to go. And what I'm learning to do is to just trust myself. I don't need to know where it's going to go because I trust myself to react however I'm going to need to react to whatever's going to happen. And that's really empowering. That's really a thrill to be able to feel that way. Because, social anxiety and depression and all that stuff destroys that. It levels you. Connecting to other people is like an antidote for me. I mean, that's how I'm an extrovert personality type. If you want to get into labels, being alone and insular and behind screens and not connecting to people in the real world, for me is like extremely anxiety producing. And getting out into the world and connecting to people, being on your feet, moving about, smelling the air, being in the world, I find is an antidote to being depressed. And when you're depressed, you don't want to do anything. Don't want to take a shower, don't want to get off the bed, don't want to get off the couch. And then when you're depressed, it's like you can never remember a time when you weren't depressed and you feel like it's going to be forever. And it's not. It's like being kind to myself. It's like, having faith in myself and faith in the world, which is important because all of the media that we read and stuff we see tells us that the world's a really dangerous place and people are really fucked up and it's really bad. And when you travel, be careful. Don't go out on your own. You're a woman especially. Don't be alone in the world traveling. I mean, yes, bad things can happen. That's really not good. But I think by and large, most people are kind-hearted, good-natured, want to do good people. I think for the most part, the world is a much kinder place than we're told it is.
Yeah. I'm not. What's your channel? What's your channel?
Can I be in your video?
How many subs?
You already are.
How many subs?
Oh, yes.
Come on. Can you get us jumping in? Can you get us jumping in?
I'll totally get
Come on. Let's fucking do it. We're doing
I like
it for
the
the
YouTube.
We're doing it. We're doing it.